My name is Margaret Lane. I'm the History Social Science Department head. I have with me 5 students who I am currently teaching in what's called Individual and Society, which is our sophomore level class. I'm going to share my screen very quickly just to give you sort of an overview of our department's offerings. And then I'm going to actually turn things over to these 5 very capable students who earlier in this semester completed an investigation of a historical behavioral psychology test. And they're going to tell you a little bit about their experience and about their presentation. And then we'll have some Q&A. Okay, so as I said, this is the History Social Science Department. We have 4 grades in the upper school. 9th grade, the students have what's called it's a world history course called Global Identities and Institutions. This course is not just a world history course, but it's also a course that establishes a lot of skills that students are going to need in their history social science courses at Castellea going forward. In 10th grade, they take 2 one-semester courses, and I will fix this for the archive, but I neglected to put it on this slide. It's actually 2 courses that they take in 10th grade. The first is called Individual and Society, which is the course that you are watching the mini lesson about. And then they have a semester of government, US government. We are committed to doing that in the 10th grade rather than in the 12th grade, as many high schools do, because we believe that it is part of the sequence of what they're learning. And also it gets them involved civically before they are eligible to vote. And a lot of our sophomores were very involved in the election this year as poll workers. Some of them did phone banking. So we feel it's really important to get them interested and knowledgeable about government as sophomores. 11th grade is US history, as it is in most high schools. We call it advanced topics. We do not offer an AP US history. We call it advanced topics because it's actually quite in-depth, quite skill-based, a lot of writing, a lot of analysis, a lot of primary source unpacking. So it's a very, very rich survey course of US history. And then in 12th grade, students can opt from a number of honors and advanced topic electives, among them a modern religions course, Latin American history course, art history course. And if they have an interest that isn't covered by one of the electives, they can opt for what's called advanced topics research and writing, where they write a quite extensive college level research paper under the guidance of a couple of faculty and also our librarians as well. So we're going to switch now to the lesson that the students are going to be demonstrating. This is a lesson where they unpack historic behavioral psychology studies. They first researched the study, they wrote an analysis of the study, and then they created a presentation, part of which you're going to see today, where they actually taught the study to their classmates. Now, I made this slide purposefully bland and pedestrian to contrast what you're about to see in terms of the student work. So I'm going to advance the slide, and I'm going to turn it over to Zoe, Piper, and Allison, who will walk you through some aspects of the study and presentation that they did.
Okay, cool. So some historical context and background information behind Darley and Latané's experiment. In 1964, a woman called Kitty Genovese was returning to her apartment from her job. As she left her car and walked towards her building, she was stabbed viciously by an attacker with a knife. She kept yelling for help, but to little avail, and when emergency services were called, it was already too late. Later, the investigation showed that 38 people were in the area and they had witnessed the attack of Kitty Genovese, but only one had eventually taken action and called the police. The question posed during this experiment was, how does the number of bystanders in a given emergency situation affect the responses and actions of the bystanders? Darley and Latané's hypothesis was that as the number of bystanders increase, the willingness of individuals to help the person in the emergency decreases.
Yeah, and the way that they conducted this study was by having subjects go in a room alone and be told that they were talking to other people. So one group was told that they were talking to one other person. The second group was told that they were talking to two other people. And the third group was told that they were talking to five other people. And then they would have a recording of one of the other people in their group having a seizure, and they recorded how many people went to get help for this other person that was having a seizure.
Their experimental results strongly supported their hypothesis because they found that as the number of bystanders or people in the group increased, the number of subjects that responded to the emergency by getting help decreased significantly. And Darley and Latané believe this is due to social influence, which is the idea that an individual's behavior is affected by the behaviors of those around them. They found that the more people there are in a group, the less guilt each individual bystander feels for not helping in the emergency because they bear the weight of their decisions alongside others. Finally, research has shown that those who know about the bystander effect are more likely to help in emergencies. And as a result, they believe this study should be taught to the larger population because it would encourage people to aid in emergencies regardless of the behaviors of surrounding bystanders, and it may have prevented the death of Kitty Genovese.
I'm going to turn things over to Kaylee and Maura to talk about another study.
Hi everyone, I'm Kaylee.
And I'm Maura, and as Zoe, Piper, and Allison were just discussing, we've been learning about how various factors influence the behavior of individuals. So we were tasked with presenting on the Bouchard study, which is more commonly known as the twin study.
This study was conducted in 1990 by Thomas Bouchard and David Lycan, who were two psychologists and geneticists. So during the second half of the 20th century, psychology was dominated by the theory of behaviorism, which stated that all human behavior is controlled by environmental factors. This study was conducted when the need arose to distinguish the environmental factors and the biological factors that influence people's personalities.
The general public knows this idea as nature versus nurture. Does who we are as individuals come from our genetic makeup, or do our surroundings have a greater effect? So take a moment to think about your life. Do you think you've been more influenced by nature or nurture?
So after you've thought about that for a moment, we'll continue on. So in contrast to the previous group study, this study was observational, and it was conducted using the survey method. So first, the researchers gathered together two groups of people, identical twins who were raised together and identical twins who were raised apart. Each twin individually filled out surveys and went through interviews, testing personality traits, aptitude, occupational interests, and intelligence.
The data collected showed that twins who were raised apart grew to be very similar in adulthood, despite their different upbringings, meaning that biological factors have a large influence on your traits as an individual. In fact, the results from one of the IQ tests in the study found that approximately 70% of the traits were inherited through genetics, and only 30% were based on environmental factors. This means that in the contest between nature and nurture, nature generally wins.
So you'll notice here on this slide, we were talking about results. We designed it to pull out all the key points that we wanted people to take away. So in the beginning of this presentation, we asked you to think about whether you thought nature or nurture had a greater influence on who you are as a person. So after hearing about the study, has your opinion of it changed at all?
Okay, thank you. I want to just ask the students a couple of quick questions, and then I do want to get to any questions that our attendees have. I guess this was a group project, and there were about 3 of you in each group. Can somebody tell me how you went about dividing up amongst the 3 of you, the 3 who were there here, and then I know one of the members couldn't make it, but in general, how did you go about divvying up the tasks of putting this presentation together?
I can answer this. So for my group, we debated between dividing up the tasks or doing them all together. And we thought that doing them together would be the best method since it would let us all have our various viewpoints in the presentation. So we assigned one person to each section, but then read over all of them and practiced giving the presentation where each of us were given different sections and decided what worked best.
Did the other group have a different method of doing it? Or was it the same?
We did it pretty similarly, except we had a little bit of difficulty because during some of the classes, not our entire group could be in the class. So we ended up just dividing up the work and dividing up different sections. And then later we would go back and edit each other's sections so that we would be very familiar with all of it.
Great, great. Another question I have is, how did learning about the study that you took a deep dive in, or any of the other studies that your classmates shared with you, how did it impact your understanding of human behavior?
I can answer this one.
Okay.
I think one of the great things about this class is that it mixes your personal opinions and biases with the history that you're learning about. So Kaylee and I both had beliefs going into this project before we even knew the results of the study. And then we were able to incorporate the facts and the history of the results with our personal beliefs and kind of vary those and contrast them to each other. So it was pretty interesting to learn about.
Piper or Zoe, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, similarly to Maura, I would say that INS definitely varies from like other courses I've taken, just because even though we're learning and interpreting like human behavior and societal responsibilities, we're also like constantly adding our takes and like opinions and biases onto these events and issues rather than just learning the facts and like taking notes. And a more specific example would be like about the Bouchard study. I definitely thought that I was raised up more like nurture rather than nature, but now I can kind of see that nature might have been a bigger component in raising me up than nurturing did.
Piper, why don't you bring us home with one more comment, and then we'll go to any of the questions about the course, about this assignment, anything that you want our observers to know.
Yeah, I've definitely had like some fun in this class with some of the other stuff that we're doing as well, like learning about all these things that I've heard about in the past but not really known that much about, such as like Plato and Aristotle and just like all those philosophers that everyone's like heard their name of but doesn't really know that much about, and like understanding like what their different beliefs were and seeing like where I fall based on like the different spectrums of their beliefs on how we should govern or just how we should act as humans has been really interesting.
Great, great. I'm not seeing any questions quite yet. I guess maybe just to sum up, if we don't have another question, if I guess I would ask each of you to sort of say, now I know some of you were here from middle school, so it might not have been as much of a decision. And I know we also have Maura who opted to transfer to Castellea. So what is it about about either staying at the middle school, staying at the upper school, or choosing the upper school, choosing to stay at the upper school, was kind of paramount in your minds as you thought about Castellea? This is more of an admissions question than a history social science question. Why don't I start with Zoe?
Yeah, I definitely considered, because I was a new 9, I definitely also considered Castellea. Like, it was the only school I applied to just because it was so similar to my last school in terms of the environment. And even the classes and extracurriculars, there was such a nice like balance. So you could partake in so many different aspects of the school and you could contribute as well as take part in a lot of clubs and also activities and events. events, sorry. So Castello was mainly my first choice because I knew that I would be able to thrive in this environment just because I could be a part of so many different parts of the school.
Maura, why don't you take it, since you're our outlier a little bit as someone who came in 10th grade?
Yeah, so I was new this year coming in on this sort of Zoom environment of school. But I think one of the main things that I really have appreciated about the history courses and INS, Individuals in Society, so far is that it really takes the extra step when learning about history, because that's why we learn history. It's not just about the facts and what's in the textbook. It's really about connecting it to what's going on right now and connecting it to your beliefs. So it's been interesting to go about learning specific events, and like Piper was talking about, Plato and Aristotle and their beliefs and how they still connect to the world today, and being able to do a little bit more research and put more personality and individuality into the work.
Okay, we do have a question from the chat, and that is, how does this, and this is kind of a good test for me to know whether I'm doing this or not, and that is helping you connect what you did, those of you who were here for 9th grade, or if you were in a world history course last year, how this course, this INS course, is connecting to what you did last year. I know it seems like a long time ago. Does Piper, Kaylee, or Allison want to take that one?
Well, I definitely know that for sure some of the skills we learned last year are very much used this year as well, kind of being able to look at a bunch of different information and consolidate it and kind of form our own point of view and form our own perspective while using a lot of evidence to back it up. And I know that's just an important skill that we definitely learn here at Castellia and can be used in so many different ways.
Yeah, and also just adding on, I definitely agree with that, Allison. Like last year was world history, so we learned a lot about the different time periods and what was happening. So a lot of the philosophers, were around during the Industrial Revolution or during various movements. So it's nice knowing the historical context behind them, which kind of motivated a lot of their thinking.
Great, great. We do have a couple of other participants who have joined. So I just want to reiterate that this presentation is going to be on the website, so you'll be able to get the sort of the one-sided of it. But if you have a question about to the students especially, or to me as the department head, please go ahead and ask that. Piper, I wanted to give you a chance to chime in about your how you see a connection in the history class you took last year and this year.
Yeah, kind of similar to what Kaylee was saying. Like a lot of what we did last year was definitely more like knowing like just the history, like what actually happened in the world. And then now this year, it's more like applying it and thinking more about it and having that like base of knowing what was happening when and where and how it was affecting normal people definitely helps to like understand what was going through these thinkers' heads as they were writing and thinking.
Great, great. Well, I know we've kind of come up to our time here, but I don't want people to feel like we're rushing, especially since we got a little bit of a late start, and at the same time, I don't want to keep people too long. So I do want to very much thank you all. I want to thank the students for hanging in there. I want to thank everybody for hanging in there. We've kind of become accustomed to hurry up and wait in Zoomville, so so we're getting good at patience. And I do want to extend an invitation to anybody who's attended this webinar to contact me, M. Lane, at castellea.org if you have any questions about the history social science curriculum. I think all of these students are open to questions as well. If you want to send a question to admissions for a sophomore to answer a question, I'm sure they could easily take that on and respond. So I think with that, we will close things up. And again, thank you, and have a great rest of your weekend. It's, as I said, it's not quite as blue sky-ish outside as our virtual backgrounds suggest, but it's always a sunny day at Castellea in many ways. So so thanks again, and we hope to see more of you as the admission season wears on.